Welcome to this week's show. Election season continues, and so does the craziness. Did the Donald really donate to charity? Will Hillary get indicted? What's Bernie's next move? And is all of this craziness an opening for the Libertarian Party candidate? Ron Bowers, what say you?
I'd say all three of them are relatively accurate. The election season continues, and so does the craziness. Did the Donald really donate? Well, today he donated after the press said, show us who you donated to.
And he was quite
show us the
indignant
checks.
about it. He was quite indignant about it, wasn't he?
Yes, he doesn't respect the First Amendment rights too much.
Well, he doesn't understand that that's what the press do. I mean, that's their job.
Yeah.
Here's the other interesting piece. So I was in a car listening to the radio. So now the Donald may be under indictment in New York for fraud.
For Trump University?
For the Trump University thing. So is it going to be a race?
I also believe a judge is trying to unseal the records with the Trump University case that's been held under the table for a while.
I thought that happened.
I thought the judge was trying to get it released within the last week, but I think there's some legal...
Now, is that the judge who was born in Mexico?
I think it is the one who
But he was really born, in
there.
Illinois or Indiana?
Yeah.
A federal judge, yes.
Well, and that's one of the unfortunate, I think, parts, and then something that Donald, for whatever the Donald, I guess I should say, for whatever reason, seems to get away with. He attacks anybody who criticizes him or even questions him, which for any other candidate would be a death sentence. It seems to work for him, which I'm not entirely sure what that says.
You know, the reality. I think a lot of people dislike the press at this point, and they all understand him. You know, Ron and I were talking actually before the show started. It seems like the only people they give the mic to anymore are the extremists. And I don't know about you guys, but you know, I'm a little right of center. I'm okay with you being center or a little left of center, or maybe even a little more than a little left of center or right of center. But the extremists seem to be who get the mics.
Well, and you know, we have a tradition in this country, whether it's deserved or not, and whether it has been earned here of late, of having a fairly independent press. So unlike in England, where you have a statedly a press that leans one way or another, actually holds up an opinion and is more tabloid-like, we're supposed to have a fairly independent press, and you can watch your venue of choice, whichever one that may be, and get a completely different version of reality.
You see what happened with Megyn Kelly and Fox News and Donald Trump. Yeah. I mean, she was asking him not unfair questions, in my opinion, and he was totally, I guess the right word would be, angered by it.
But Brian, if he don't like what you're saying, he interrupts and he gets in your face.
That's right.
And he's
and
successful
I
at it.
did that on purpose because that's what he does, and people cannot get the mic back.
And guess what? Megyn Kelly acquiesced.
She did.
She went to his place. You know the argument that when you're having an argument, the last one that talks loses, right?
That doesn't seem to hold for him.
No.
Now, the one thing, and you know, another fair point during the introduction. The framers of the Constitution, first of all, never envisioned the political parties that we have in this country having become what they have become. In between the campaign finance disaster that we have, in between super PACs, in between the amount of power, ultimately, that the two political parties have. So, you know, it should be fair that we should be talking about a third party, about the Libertarians or the Greens or any of the other parties out there.
What an amazing segue. Let's talk about former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, who is leading the Libertarian ticket, and former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld, his running mate of choice. What do we know about those guys?
Ron Johnson, governor of New Mexico, I believe, for 8 years. I think he left in 2006. Bill Weld was governor of Massachusetts in the 90s. I don't know much about either of them. Gary Johnson did get, I think, 1% of the vote in 2012.
He did.
Recent polling has him around 10% in recent polling.
And I believe, does he have enough to get in the debate?
The magical number is 15, right?
It's going to be very tough.
So in order to get into the debates, and that's really ultimately why third-party candidates normally don't tend to do well, because the media doesn't give them any attention because they're not center stage and they're not driving up ratings. I do happen to know that Governor Richardson apparently has climbed every single mountain, the tallest mountain on every continent, which is a fairly impressive feat.
Governor Johnson?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Not Richardson. Wrong New Mexico governor. He has climbed all the very. I actually saw an interview both with him and with Weld, his running mate. Very interesting people, and I think actually, you know, they're party platform this time around might be very interesting to people who are either getting burned out by the Donald, who can't trust Hillary, and are looking for a third choice. And I think, we've seen this happen before, and you had people like, certainly like
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot, thank you.
yeah.
My drawing a little bit of a blank
Ralph
there,
Nader.
or Ralph Nader in,
Yeah,
2000.
exactly. So let's back up a second. So the unfavorability of the two candidates on the left and the right really are a big thing for him. And from a platform perspective, and I did do some research, he wants a truly balanced budget. I'm a centrist,
And he
but
doesn't really want the government getting involved as much as it does in people's lives.
well, so he's pro-choice by that statement.
Who is?
Johnson.
Okay. Yeah, but he's not, is he the guy?
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Who's the new
Libertarian.
guy today? There's
Oh,
a guy, David
yeah,
Franks,
but
David.
but that's
Isn't he a new guy?
He's just a third
Yeah.
party beyond the third party. He's
Oh.
he's
That's
a fourth
that's
party
what the
candidate.
Bill Kristol,
Bill Kristol,
the
yeah.
elites who write at the National Review.
Well, he
who
used
wa-
to write. He
right.
used to. Yeah, he was
But
involved
it
in
really doesn't matter because it's already too late to get on
It'd be
the
almost
ballot
impossible.
in places
Yeah.
like Texas. And there may be a legal challenge. I think the reason the Libertarians, and some smaller degree to Greens because they're a newer party, are going to do well, they're already on the ballot in 50 states.
So
they
here's
have
what-
the political
Here's
organization
what
to
Johnson
be there.
says he stands for: truly balanced budget. Eliminate tax subsidies. Period. None. Get rid of double taxation in business. Get rid of the current income tax system and replace it with consumption tax. Term limits. Create an environment for job growth. His thought process is government doesn't create jobs. Limited government. That's a squeaky one. I don't need. You'd have to flush that out a little bit for me. Stop funding our enemies. I can agree with that one. Simplify the process of immigration. Focus on catching and deporting the bad actors, and simplify the process for people to become legal residents or citizens of the United States.
Why hasn't this gained traction before?
Well, I don't know, and I don't know that it'll gain traction this time, Ron.
I think the difficulty will be members of Congress and senators will have to vote to approve those things. And there are so many vested special interests in that entire list of things that were mentioned that it'll be very difficult to get through Congress.
No, absolutely, and ultimately a president really can't do this by themselves. However, I think what we are seeing is, and I think it's very indicative in the rise of Donald, and to some degree it's indicative, and I think the Republican Party started falling apart earlier than the Democratic Party started falling apart because they courted, it really goes back to the courting of the social conservatives, which I think took them away from what their core values were, and then this entire disaster that they created in the way of the Tea Party has completely dragged the Republican Party down to.
And I think the Tea Party, I think in some states the Tea Party is probably okay. I think our particular version of it, quite frankly, is far too right for me.
Well, and here's the problem with the Tea Party, and I understand they're again indicative of this anger that the populace has with the party system. The problem is you can't just be against everything. At some point, you actually have to have a platform and be for something. And I'm not saying that everybody in the Tea Party is this way, but certainly we've seen the paragons of the Tea Party just be, first of all, people like our good friend, the former governor of Alaska, who contribute absolutely nothing to society aside from providing a lot of tabloid fodder in the way of
She's
their family brawls and everything that
rumored
occurs.
to be on Trump's VP shortlist.
That would
be a gift
That would definitely
to the Democratic
also
Party.
drive my opinion of the Donald even farther into the ground.
Don't you think this is all going to change once the conventions are over?
Oh,
Once that you
absolutely.
began campaigning for real, which now they're not.
Well, it might change to some degree, but again, I think that there is a small percentage not a small percentage, a rising percentage of people who are done with the two parties.
And that's probably true. But this term, this cycle, does Gary Johnson and Bill Weld have a flying
I think
chance?
okay. So here's what I would say to that.
Can he win?
I think he's got a better
No.
chance. He's got a better chance than Perot did because he was running
But
against.
can he win? Yes or no?
If he gets into the debates, possibly.
Okay, Ron?
I don't think he's got near the shot that Perot did. Perot ran a campaign. Perot had money. Perot did a lot. He worked with education in Texas. He did so many things with computers. These two guys are just known as whatever.
So what do you think?
There's no chance he wins the presidential election.
On a larger basis, the platform issues that I talked about, my last piece on that, from my perspective, is that these are all, in my mind, an oversimplification of things that most people probably want. who's going to stand up and say, I don't want a balanced budget? You know, who's going to, unless you're getting the tax subsidies, who's going to say, I want those to continue? But getting rid of those is not going to be easy.
No, of course not. But I think here's the point that I would make is that this election cycle has already proven that the way we thought things were going to go, I don't think anybody in their right mind a year ago thought Donald Trump would be the Republican nominee.
Well, he's got a campaign ad out on that now about all the people saying he's not going to he's going to get in for a couple weeks and then get out. He's not going to be the nominee. He's not going to do this. He's not going to do that. And I mean, you know, everybody was.
Did he
saying that.
surprise himself when
I
he
don't
made the
know.
comment about John McCain? I mean, if a Democrat had made that comment about John McCain, a prisoner of war, and what Trump said about him,
Yeah.
they would have been crucified. Probably, look how Kerry was swift-boated. So when you look at what he did he really expect to get this far? I don't think he did.
I think
He probably didn't
you're
expect
not
it.
taking into account his ego, which is tremendous.
But
So
you know
actually,
what?
I think in the
It works for
world
him.
of Donald Trump, he is exactly where he thinks he should be.
It works for him. So, you know, I will not be surprised, gentlemen, if in November we're not saying President Trump.
What Trump is saying with what he says, what the Republican base wants to hear, and they've agreed with it. They voted for it.
Well, and in my mind, the big question is, what do the independents want to hear? We talked last week on this panel about the fact that, you know, because of the lack of open primaries in many states, that's a huge percentage of the voting population that we don't get to hear from until actual election day. But I'm going to take the last word on that. Next up on the flip side, the Zika virus. What should you know? We're back in 3 minutes. Please stay tuned.